Whew, gosh, what a day today has been already. And it is not even 12 o'clock. Hi, welcome to my channel. I hope you guys are doing good today. Today, I wanted to talk about all of the jobs that I have had to have as a creative, as a filmmaker, as a person that is 23 years old. These are all of the jobs that I have done in my life. Let's talk about them and some of the things that I've learned from them. One of the first jobs I've ever had was scorekeeping for basketball games. I did a lot of basketball growing up, and I got offered this opportunity to, do scorekeeping. It was under the table. I got paid like $15 an hour or whatever, and basketball games only last about an hour. So that's kind of my very first job I did at the age of 15. So again, I legally in North Carolina couldn't work or do the whole like paper application part until I'm 16. So 15 under the table jobs. I was also, being a quote unquote neighborhood nanny, I guess. So I would go and look after the kids in the neighborhood while the parents are out on a date or whatever. So I would also do that and hang out. And yeah, that was kind of fun. It was what it was. I kind of just learned about, making money and how important it is and like the value of a dollar kind of. Because, I would make $15 and I'd be like, if I wanted to hang out with my friends, that's like, $3-4 right there. And then I'm like not left with much. And, so it's just like a whole thing. So you really learn the value of a dollar in your first job. Even like way back before I started getting into actual jobs, I was in school. I was selling, those survival bracelets and like the duct tape wallets, like anything that was popular in terms of like the things, I was selling them. I was like, hang the shoes on the lockers. Like, if I was selling something, you come to me. Obviously there was a lot of people that kind of sold some of the stuff, but I would sell that kind of stuff at school. So that's pretty fun and also illegal. I do think that is, but let's not talk about that. So my first like actual job, I think it was rack room shoes, and I got this job in the mall. I was working in North Carolina, so I was working at Concord Mills Mall, and that mall is crazy busy, populated, known for sex trafficking at the time. So I think it still might be, I don't know. I think they might have cracked down on it. But anyways, so I was working here. I got a job or whatever because at the time I think my mom worked at the mall at one point. But anyways, so I submitted the application. They interviewed me. They said, okay. I worked there for all of 2 weeks, and I quit because it was awful, and I hated it, and they put me on register, and that gave me so much anxiety that I literally just had to quit. So that's what I did. I quit. And keep in mind, I'm also, in school in most of these jobs that I had. So I've been doing, basketball in the school or like extracurricular activities. So it could be like guitar lessons or, basketball, any kind of like sport like that. And working as well. So keep that in mind. I was trying to do all of this stuff at the same time. It was kind of a lot. And then in the summer, I would be a pool attendant. So my brother actually was a pool attendant first, and they were looking for more hires. And so then I put my application in because he said it was really easy. You get paid, $15 an hour. You just sit there at the pool, get tan, and you just like watch people and take the levels of the chlorine and stuff, whatever. So I did that for like 2 summers. And it was good and all, but like I was tired of making nothing. And also it cut into a lot of time that I could be spending with my friends. Actually, I don't even think I had friends at the time. I had a friend group at some point in high school, and, I had to work, and that was, whatever. Some of them worked at different places and they earned a lot more, and I was getting frustrated. But anyways, it was a whole thing. That was what I did. I was a pool attendant, and, I didn't make much. But I just got to sit at the pool outside in the sun and just watch people have fun. I couldn't go swimming. but I could watch people have fun. And then I worked back in the mall in Banana Republic. I worked for them. I was on shipment, so I would, get up really early, 5, 6 in the morning, go drive to the mall. Nothing would be open. There would be like a secret door that's only open for like early workers like us. And we would go in, they would open the store just for us, like the gate. And then we would go in, get the shipment. We would start unpackaging everything, putting everything on hangers, or we would fold them. And we would just put them out on the floor. And then, when the store opened up, we would either be finishing up or we'd be done. And so we would leave at that point, and they would have the rest of the day. I think that one was like 16 an hour, or maybe 17. Maybe it was 10, 12. I don't really know. It was low, but that's what I did. And then I worked at Old Navy because I quit Banana because they didn't need like shipment people anymore or whatever. And then I worked at Old Navy because it's like a branch of like Banana, Gap. It's Old Navy. So I worked at Old Navy for like 2 years, I believe, during all that kind of stuff. and then COVID happened. And COVID was a weird thing. So like it was all like nobody coming to work, whatever. So then I would do door dashing. And I would DoorDash, and I would go to these like crazy people's houses, and I was in North Carolina, right? So you go to like some trailer parks, you go to, some nice places, you go to some, really hillbilly places, like you just find your place everywhere. But that's what I was doing during COVID to make something. I couldn't really just be sitting at home. I didn't have unemployment, didn't qualify for it because I was still living with my parents at the time. And I learned a lot. I learned about my area. I learned, how to drive and deliver, and, how to deliver to apartments and how apartments kind of worked and like the layout of them. So I did DoorDash for a while, and then I also went back to Old Navy, I think, as well. What I learned from these jobs at like the mall, I learned that I hated working. No, it wasn't that. It was like I learned that the people made the job easier, or the workplace better. And, you kind of have to find the fun in it. Sometimes we have really crappy jobs, and we, are awful, horrible, and we just can't figure out how to, make it good. And it's tough. It really is tough. But, really gelling with the people and mixing with the people, it's nice, honestly. So I did that for a little while. DoorDash kind of just got me out of the house. So I was doing that kind of off and on, but then I got kind of tired of it after some like weird stories and people like quitting. It is weird. But yeah, then I went to college, and that was a whole thing within itself, because college was a whole process. You got to move in. It was a, thing. And, during like COVID and everything, yeah, it was interesting. Cause, I was living at home, doing hybrid, so that was happening. I was on the basketball team for freshman year, and then I quit the basketball team because it became too much. Like working, school, basketball, just all of it, the grades, it was just exhausting. And I, at the time I was like coming out and everything was just so hard, I remember, and everything was just so tight. And, my parents were getting divorced. A lot was happening at this time. So, I was very overwhelmed. So I quit basketball, but they gave me a job opportunity through the school where I would go and I would film highlight reels for them, or I would go fill in and film the games, like camera on tripod, and I would just go back and forth. So I would make, I don't know, like minimum wage there, like 15 or whatever. And that's what I would do. I would, go and edit the shorts or whatever. And I liked it until, everyone had to move off campus, and everything was hybrid. It was just like a whole thing, so I couldn't do that anymore. So then it was time for me to get a internship. I ended up getting an internship to a TV access news station. By the way, what I learned with the filming the sports and everything was learning how to actually film live action, live sports, live things, you know. I got the internship, and it was at a TV access news station. So what that means is that the public can make, there's like a certain channel, and the public can make shows for that channel. So it's like a free thing, but you have to pay for it if you're making a show there, obviously. So I worked there as an intern, and then it kind of turned into a job. Again, wasn't really being paid the greatest. It was great because I got to learn a lot about the cameras, a lot about, you know, the news setups and the lighting and the staging, and I would have to teach this to older people that would come in. And teaching was something I was really scared of. I mean, like, you know, I used to play it as pretend, you know, when I was a kid. I used to, you know, just teach my stuffed animals or whatever, you know, like, everybody does that, right? But when you get into the real world and you start teaching people, like, it becomes very, very anxiety inducing because you're teaching them what they're going to know. Like, it's this weird kind of thing in your brain where, like, you're actually telling someone how to do something and you're, like, younger than them. So it's, like, weird. It's like this weird hierarchy of knowledge. It's interesting. So I learned how to teach. And I learned how to, you know, teach Final Cut Pro, and editing. Podcasting was a big thing that was starting up there, so I taught podcasting, and, you know, I was doing podcasting. I was filming some of short commercials for this TV station, you know, so I was gaining some footing there. You know, I was meeting people. People had, like, film stuff out in California and stuff like that, and, you know, I was trying to, you know, get some contacts and things like that. So that was an interesting job. I liked that one and going to it. But again, it got really on a cycle, and it was really monotonous. And, you know, it was the same thing every week. You know, you were just teaching the same stuff, or you were getting the same equipment. Like, you know what I mean? So, and most of it was older equipment too, like it was used, like it was passed down. So it wasn't like top-notch new stuff. You know, I still learned everything, the switching boards and, you know, the back end of it. So it was really cool. It was a cool job, you know, and it was the first thing when I came to Philly I looked for, but they didn't have any, like, spots opened or anything, or they didn't take my application either. So there's that. So, you know, and then after that was kind of, I was working for my stepdad. So at the time he was just a boyfriend and dating my mother. And he had this line striping company, and so it's like under a category of construction. So, you know, we would wake up at like 6 a.m., we would go there, we would get all the paint machines, clean them, get the stencils, clean them, and then take them on, load them all onto the truck, and we would go to the job, we would start, you know, spraying parking lot lines, or we would do the stop bars, or we would paint the handicap signs. So, you know, this was going on for like, I don't even know, 2 years, 3 years, and this was like a job where I actually got paid really well. And it was nice, you know, because you got finished at like, so you started at like 6 a.m. and then you finished at like, the latest would probably be like 3 o'clock. Some days were like 8 to 10. Some days were like 8 to, or 6 to 12, you know, so it kind of ranged, but it was a nice job. It was fun because I was doing something with my hands. I liked that. I can't sit down and do something for a while because of my ADHD, but that was nice because it was like a hands-on thing. I was moving things, I was lifting things. It was like physical. I liked that. It was a challenge, you know. So that was pretty fun. I did that for a while, and then I started getting small little AC gigs, so assistant camera gigs in Wilmington. It was like 3 hours away at the beach in North Carolina, but I I literally would go drive down there in the morning, go there for the shoot, and I would drive back the night. So I would stay and shoot the entire day. I would only make $100, right? They would write me out a check, they would give it to me, and I would drive all the way back. Most of that money went to the gas, but again, it was experience, it was meeting people, and now I have friends on Instagram, Facebook that do cool stuff, and if I reached out or whatever, I'm sure they wouldn't mind, but it doesn't really help me because I'm in a different state now, so. But if I ever moved back to North Carolina, those people would be the ones I would hit up. After those small gigs, I ended up getting a job for a photographer. And this photographer had his own business, so he was doing photos for clients. He would do weddings. He would do like senior portraits, things like that. And he would also do photos for companies. And he brought me on to do small videos for companies, like edits and shorts and stuff. And through these things, through the small gigs and working for this photographer, I learned a lot about videography, how sets work, how the different roles play out. I was learning a lot from both other videographers from the small gigs and a photographer. You'd be surprised how similar photography and videography are. Most of the people like to just really hard separate it, but it's actually very, very similar in terms of framing, lighting, all these things. It's very similar. So I would learn a lot about just everything and anything. I was a sponge at this point. I was also excited because I was getting things that were in my field, right? Because I knew from the start that I was going to be going into something creative, artsy, hands-on, and it was going to be very competitive, and it's going to be very hard to get a job. I already knew that going into that, so I was just like, all right. But this was at a time where I was just getting everything and anything, and I was just saying yes to everything, and learning anything that I could from anyone who had more experience than I did. So I learned a lot from that, from camera-wise, and how to shoot for companies, and kind of the things that they would want, or how to tell a story for a company in a way that they would like it. This is also where I learned that I didn't like having a script from another person to follow, because there was no creativity for me in it. So doing videos for companies and them being like, hey, I don't like this. Can you change that? Can you do this? Can you word it differently? Can you change the text, the font, the size, the color? So I was like, oh man, if I want to do this, this is not what I want to be doing. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just go into the film. Maybe I just have to get my foot into the film industry, right, somewhere. And so that's actually when I ended up getting a job for A&E. I was working a TV show. Found this random Facebook ad. Didn't know if it was a scam or not, but I sent in all of my stuff, and it actually ended up being a real thing. So I had to drive to Greensboro, right, which is where Mr. Beast films. And that was, 2-3 hours-ish away from where I was. So, I drove all the way down there, and thankfully I had these friends that I met on these small gigs. They had a house, and they were like, hey, you can come and stay here for the remainder of the shoot, just follow these rules or whatever. And that's what I did. So I stayed with the people who I met at these small gigs, and they were very nice. It was great. It worked out so well, so perfectly. So this camera PA. So I was originally signed on for a PA, right, which is a production assistant. So as a production assistant, you do the shopping for the groceries. You do the food orders from all of the food places. You drive everyone everywhere. You pack the car. So you're doing all these things. You take out the trash, right? You're doing all this like dirty work, and it sucks. However, you learn so much stuff, and you also learn that in the film industry, in the TV industry, people have their hats, and that's that. Like, you cannot take off someone's hat from them. You cannot switch it. You cannot become this other person. Like, even if you wanted to help for it, no, like, you have to stay in your lane, and that is your title. That is your role. That's how it's specific. That's how it's done. If you want to be in the film industry, the TV industry, you have to work your way up, starting from the PA. You have to have like 10 PA jobs, and then you can become a whatever you want, and then you have to pick out which one you want to go into. So I ended up being like a camera PA, because I showed interest really early on in the cameras, and I hung around the DP. And later on, he wasn't so fond of me. I don't know really what happened, but I learned from him. And later there was also a second AC that came in and helped him, and I learned a lot from him. And I still follow him on Instagram and stuff, but yeah, so I learned a lot. And I'd also, like, you know, I was working 12 hours a day. I was getting paid like $24 an hour as a PA, which wasn't bad. And for like 6 months, 5 months maybe, that wasn't that bad either. But I was also working in a prison, because it was 60 days in, and that's where we were filming. We were filming in a literal prison. Super cool experience, super weird. However, again, I learned a lot, not only just about like film and the industry, but also about prison. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in prison, and I'm really surprised at, it's a whole nother world in there, of course. But yeah, so that was a pretty interesting job. And then after that, I was like, you know, because I would talk to some of the people who would come in, you know, who would be there for like, I don't know, a month or two and then leave. I would talk to these people, and these people are really like, yeah, like, you know, you miss a lot of birthdays, you miss a lot of, you know, anniversaries, weddings, things like that. And I'm like, well, you know, at the time, right, I was in a relationship, and I was like, you know what, that kind of sounds like not fun. Like, maybe I don't want to do that. Like, I love it. I do. I love, you know, storytelling and creating things, and, you know, working with people as long as they're nice and they like me. You know, that was what I wanted to do. And, you know, when I started hearing these things, and, you know, I started seeing the other side of the industry and how cutthroat it is, I was just like, maybe I don't want to be doing 12-hour days every single day for like 6 months straight. And then also missing everything, you know, and family and whatever else. I mean, obviously, if like someone dies, you get some days off, but that's it. I learned that, and I was like, you know what, maybe I don't want to go into the TV or film industry, just because, you know, it's a lot of work. It is. But I love it so much. But I realized that maybe this isn't the path for me, right? So after that, I was kind of out of a job, and I was also out of a relationship. Traumatized me, but I ended up applying for a videographer in Maine. And I've talked about this so much on my channel, so if you guys know, you know. But I ended up in a Maine summer camp for girls. At this summer camp, I was just so shocked. I was also very depressed. I was depressed, and then I got there, and everyone was nice to me. Everyone was so accepting. You know, everyone was having a great time. It was like stress-free. Like, I was in an environment where I felt like it was okay to just be present, like there, like, you know, fully on, free in the moment. And that changed my entire perception of jobs. For me, I was like, wow, this is, you know, great. I get to film these kids having fun. I get to film the staff members or my coworkers having fun. And then we get like a day off a week to go have fun. I mean, this is all fun, you know? So that really opened my eyes. And most of these people who are working at camp are international. Mostly because like you can technically pay internationals less because they're coming from overseas, and it's like a whole thing. And the camp industry is quite interesting if you really look into it. But yeah, so I was meeting all these people from different countries, and I'm like, wow, you get to, travel and do these things. And, ever since I was young, I would watch, travel YouTubers like Fun for Louie and, Sam Sawyer, like all these people who would go on adventures and trips. And, I was like, wow, like, maybe, I mean, that's so out of mind, but what if I did that, So, I'd meet all these people from all these different places, and I'm like, wow, that sounds incredible. And they're like, well, you can come and stay if you want. They offered, houses if they want me to stay or whatever. And I was like, what if this is actually like a possibility? Like, what if I could actually pull this off? And then I ended up meeting my girlfriend, and she was a traveler herself. And she was like, yeah, like, I just kind of travel wherever the job is. I usually get a job with free housing. This is how I do it. My eyes, my mind blew wide open. I was just like, I have missed so much of my life just sitting at home in North Carolina doing these, really rinky-dinky jobs when I could be out having fun. It was such a mind-blowing opening experience, having fun in other states as well. Like, I was just like, wow, my mind is blown. So then she offered me, after camp was done, she offered me, to put in a good word for this camp in California. It was an outdoor education job. So I would be teaching science to kids who are in 5th, 4th, 6th grade. And that would be what my job. So I'd be outside every day. I'd be teaching, earth things. And I'm like, you know what? That doesn't sound too bad. I'm starting to hate North Carolina because of just all of the bad juju and all of the bad experiences. It's just, everything is just depressing. So I was like, okay, great. Went home, 30 days, packed all my stuff, packed my car, and I had a road trip all the way out to California. I made a whole movie about it on my channel. Pretty crazy. I get to California, and I get to this job again, teaching kids. Like, this is the next generation. This is crazy, right? I, had a lot of anxiety. Obviously, the training was intensive. I had a lot of tools to work with. So I was very thankful for that. But yeah, so I mean, as a teacher, I just like to teach in games, because how do kids learn? By playing games. Even if they don't really consciously know what they're doing, they know what they're doing in the game, which can correlate to it, right? So at the end, we would have meetings that would be correlations to, hey, what did you do? How did that, tie into this nature thing? Blah, 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 blah. So this job gave me such a raise in confidence. I was learning so much. In Maine, I learned that I am a good videographer. Like, my stuff is decently good. And people, kids would tell me that, and it would make me feel good. Like, okay, like maybe I'm actually good at this. Maybe this is actually what I'm actually meant to be doing. So I learned that, at this California job, I just had gained this immense amount of confidence, because once you teach to kids, once you teach to the adults and the teachers that are also in that little group, you have such an immense confidence, because I proved to myself that I can teach, not having any background or experience knowing about any of this, like a month ago. And, I'm giving all this information and helping these kids learn. Like, it's crazy, right? So the confidence that came from this job was crazy. Again, I was also in another environment. This was California, right? This was like the gay capital of the world. I was so accepted. There was people like me all around everywhere, and it was great. I learned a lot about, California and, politically some stuff here and there, people's views, and, having, a different kind of culture. It's like a different culture out there. It really is. California is, it's a different culture. But not only did I get confidence and a sense of, a different environment and culture and stuff, but I also got to explore. I got to go to San Francisco. I got to go to Yosemite. I got to go to all these places in California, and I would have never dreamed, right? I got to go to the redwoods, well, close to the redwoods. I got to go to Santa Cruz. I got to go to all these really cool places out in the West, and oh my gosh, was it beautiful. And it kind of sucks that I'm away from that now, but it was so beautiful, and it triggered something in me. I was like, wow, like, we're doing all these things, we're going to Pinnacles National Park, and, again, Yosemite was mind-blowing to me. But all of these micro travel trips started, was like, okay, I like traveling. It's giving me the traveling itch. So, Haley and I, we took a cruise to Hawaii. And you can find that playlist also on my channel. I made a whole video series about it. We were going to Hawaii, and I was traveling, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is great. We're such a good couple when, we travel, because sometimes travel couples are, they're not good. But we worked so well, and, this traveling thing was great, and I was filming, and I was just having the time of my life out there in California. There were some bad parts. However, the good balanced the bad part. But I was like, oh my gosh, we need to go on more trips. So at the end of this 9-month experience, we moved back across the country. I wanted to go to New York because I was like, yeah, filmmakers, creatives, gays, they're all over there, and I want to be a part of that community. And it was out of my price range. It was out of Haley's price range. So we were like, okay, let's do Pennsylvania. We got another job because Haley had some connections in the camp world. So we got another job at another camp. This was in Pennsylvania, which was close to where we were going to move. So we were going to think about moving to Philly because it was only like an hour from New York, bus ride and everything like that. And I really wanted to go back to Maine. I wanted to go back to the summer camp in Maine. However, we were moving, so it kind of really didn't work out very well that way. So it didn't happen. So we went to this other camp. This other camp was not the greatest. I didn't have, the thrill of a lifetime like I did in Maine. The summer camp was interesting. However, I met some cool people. I have some friends all over the place now. Mexico, Ireland, places all over. And so when I travel, I can be like, hey, let's reconnect. But, so I think also I learned from that job was the first time is always going to be mind-blowing. And then all the times after that is just going to be average. Like, you're always going to be searching for that first-time feel, and it's never going to be like that. And so I had to go into it like, okay, this is probably going to be not as good. And it wasn't. It was worse. It was horribly worse. But hey, my window got smashed. I had to learn about, car window replacements and was learning all that kind of stuff. And I was learning how to work with another videographer for that same job. It was a lot of learning, and it wasn't fun learning. It was just learning. And then we got an apartment, and then it took me 5 months to get a job here. And then I got a job working at Warby Parker, the glasses store. And then I learned about, glasses and selling glasses and eye care, and learned a lot about, the different prescriptions and, things that people need. So it was really interesting to learn about that. I don't really know when I'm going to use that next, but some of these jobs come full circle because some of these jobs have gotten me ready for jobs that I've in the future that I've, done. Like my second AC one, that came in handy when I was doing my show, and my show kind of prepared me for just the industry, right? And live action sports filming kind of came in handy when I had to film for camp. So, it's kind of all encompassing. Every job you have it for a specific reason. It teaches you something that you need in the future. So that's kind of how I view jobs. And they also make you money as well to pay the rent. I worked for Warby, and then I finally got another videography job, which I was so blessed because I was like working 6 months at this glasses place. It was very monotonous. I was like dreading it, starting to, and it wasn't fun. But again, the people made it fun. And I finally got this job that I'm at now, where I go in my film dance competitions. You know, I'm learning about live streaming and these setups and, you know, how to travel, book hotels, book rental cars, you know, do all these things. So I'm learning a lot about all this stuff. And this is preparing me for something else. That was the long list of all of the jobs that I've had in my life. I'm really curious to know what jobs you guys have worked at that has been your favorite. It's a lot to experience. There's a lot of jobs in 23 years, but, you know, I get bored. That's just what it is. My ADHD, I just get very bored at jobs. And, you know, if they're the same, if they're monotonous. And with this dance videography job that I have, it never gets boring because, I mean, yeah, I'm doing the same thing, but all the dance routines are different. All the places that I'm going and traveling to are different. You know, so it's like there are some parts that are same, but most of it is different. And that's what I'm like, okay, I want to do this next year. So even though it is seasonal and it sucks, but it is what it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, give it a like, share, comment, subscribe, you know, all the fun things. Everything is linked down in the description below, including my Patreon page. So if you want to go support me, you can check out the photos and videos that I post weekly in the journal entries and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, let me know what was your biggest lesson from one of the jobs that you've worked at. And it's really interesting what you can pull out of a job and what it teaches you. Peace out. Peace out. Enjoy life. Live it up.